When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in comfort with Witchmeet, the new conferencing system from Bard Enterprises. Stop that pig killing and scrounging for chestnuts. Avoid the hurly-burly and work from home with ease. Paddock calls. The charm's wound up, but it won't be forever, so act now. A drum, a deal doth come. Witchmeet from Bard Enterprises. This is a video on some of the key themes of Shakespeare's Macbeth. Visit crashbangstudy.com for how to beef up your exam notes, find a version you'll actually enjoy, and, most importantly, procrastinate. Theme: Ambition. Ambition is central to the play. Without it, there would be no play. Macbeth wouldn't murder Duncan, and we'd all go on our merry way. Ambition is Macbeth's fatal flaw. He falls from a respectable and honourable position to one of corruption. This makes him a tragic hero. This flaw is what the witches and Lady Macbeth prey on. Let's look at how each character views ambition. Banquo hears the same prophecy as Macbeth and is told something tantalising, that he will be the father of kings. But critically, he doesn't descend into a murder spiral. He makes the moral choice, and Macbeth chooses to follow his ambition. He doesn't do so lightly, however. A key quote here is, "I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other." He knows his ambition is dangerous and can lead to downfall. When he hears the prophecy, although the idea of being king excites him, he's ashamed at both wanting it, a betrayal to his king, and the dark deeds he would need to do to accomplish it. Let not light see my black and deep desires. He considers it, agonises over it, and is in the middle of talking himself out of it, listing the reasons not to kill the king, when Lady Macbeth enters. Most of the play is written in iambic pentameter, which uses 10 syllables per line, and falls on the other is 6. When he sees his wife, his train of thought is interrupted, and he addresses her with, "How now? What news?" the 4 syllables to finish the line. This is a big flag from Shakespeare that just as Macbeth says he has no spur to urge him on, here is his spur. When Macbeth wrote the letter to his wife telling of the witch's prediction, she was ignited as he was by the news. She immediately analyses the situation and knows he art not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. She believes greatness can only be achieved through immoral means, which is rather cynical of her. But at the time of writing, many believed in the great chain of being, the idea that God had given every living thing a place in an ordered hierarchy, with the king in prime position at the top. To seek to go above your natural place was a crime against God. Both the Macbeths don't handle the fallout of pursuing their ambition very well. Lady Macbeth crumbles from the strong, determined partner of greatness as she's sidelined from the action, becoming powerless and tormented by guilt, which manifests in her sleepwalking and hand-washing, ultimately committing suicide. Although Macbeth achieves the goal of wearing the crown, there is no sense of an ending to his ambition. It becomes a constant battle to maintain his power, submerging him in paranoia, as he preemptively has Banquo killed for what the prophecy foretold for him, and guilt when Banquo's ghost torments him during a royal banquet. And it doesn't end well for him either. Whee! Following ambition at all costs and without conscience is something that is not allowed to go unpunished in the play.
Surprise Macduff! Son of a...
Theme: the supernatural. Let's start this one with lots of questions. Can the witches really see into the future and tell prophecies that are fated to happen regardless? Or are the prophecies self-fulfilling, and it's the telling that sets them in motion, lending to a psychological rather than supernatural explanation? Macbeth sees a vision of a dagger. Is it one anyone could see, sent by the witches?
Whee!
Or is it a dagger of the mind, and Macbeth is hallucinating from the pressure?
Ow!
When putting on a performance of the play, it is the director's choice whether to use an actual dagger or have the actor pretend one is there. This helps influence our opinion on agency, who is causing things to happen. Likewise, is Banquo's ghost supernatural, or the result of a breakdown from having a friend murdered? Audiences today often prefer the psychological explanation, whereas many audiences in Shakespeare's time would have enjoyed seeing the supernatural as the cause. This is important because it dictates how you see Macbeth, a man who chooses to kill to achieve what he wants, then succumbs to guilt and paranoia, or a man who is manipulated by the supernatural, and the tragedy is that he cannot escape his fate. Whatever you personally decide, the key thing to remember is that Shakespeare presents both options in the play and doesn't say one is correct and the other wrong. He wants the audience to think about all the ideas he is exploring and decide for themselves. Witches were a popular topic at the time of writing, but it's also thought that Shakespeare included the Daughters of Darkness to please King James I's interest in them. Pleasing the king meant sponsorship of the theatre, and so he could continue putting on his plays. Lady Macbeth is linked to the witches, who represent the devil's messengers, several times. She personifies the messenger who gives her news of Duncan as a raven, calling to mind animal familiars. To achieve her goal, Lady Macbeth directly calls out not to God, but God's antithesis, evil spirits. This direct address sounds like chanting a spell. To talk her husband into the deed, she will pour my spirits in thine ear. And to have the strength to do this, she asks, "Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here." Macbeth uses this word to mean the witches when he says, "The spirits that know all mortal consequences have pronounced me thus." Their evil influence lies like a veil over the couple throughout the play. Lady Macbeth asks to be unsexed. The witches are gender ambiguous. They are described as having beards, and Banquo gets in a humdinger about not being able to tell if they are women. When Lady Macbeth desperately tries to wash the spot of blood off her hand, this would call to mind for the audience at the time the superstition that witches wore the mark of the devil somewhere on their bodies. It's worth noting that not everyone at the time believed in witches and spirits, but many did, and it was a serious enough public fear that women accused of witchcraft were burned at the stake. A key quote linked to the supernatural is the witch's line, "Fair is foul and foul is fair." It means that things are not what they appear to be. Macbeth is a victim of this, as seen when he echoes the sentiment with, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." The witch's prophecies sound straightforward and lead Macbeth to think he's invincible. If none of woman born shall harm Macbeth, then he's got nothing to worry about. Except this turns out to be wordplay. He can indeed be killed like any other mortal.
Wait, what?
If God has put the rightful king on the throne, then here the devil, through the witch's lips, fools Macbeth into thinking he belongs there. Overall, the supernatural is presented as evil in the play. The witches use it to corrupt others, Lady Macbeth prays to spirits for help with her violent plans, and Macbeth chooses the supernatural over religion, his greed for power over respect for the rightful king chosen by God. As the play progresses, the other characters start to refer to him as a devil, and, like Lucifer, and Humpty Dumpty come to think of it, Macbeth has a great fall. Theme: children. One theory is that the Macbeths are grieving the death of a child. Lady Macbeth has given suck, nursed a baby, and Macduff says Macbeth has no children, which can be interpreted to mean Macbeth's had a child, but it has died. Take my milk for gall could even mean she is still producing breast milk and that her baby didn't die long before the start of the play. See the movie Macbeth starring Michael Fassbender for an example of this theory, which starts with the Macbeths burying their child. Shakespeare's own son, Hamnet, died aged 11, and Macbeth was written 10 years later. It's possible this real-life grief influenced the play. Even if you don't subscribe to this theory, the theme of children appears throughout. When Lady Macbeth describes how she would violently kill her baby if she had promised she would, this image would be horrifying and powerful on its own. But if she is indeed referring to their own dead child, this is one of the most emotionally manipulative images she could use. You can look at this in two ways. One, her desire for power and status matters more than anything else to her, and she is cold and calculating enough to casually talk about murdering a baby. Even if the image she presents isn't real, she didn't dash any brains out as far as we're aware, Duncan's life is real, and she goads Macbeth to murder him without a second thought. The other way to view her character is with a bit of sympathy. Just ignore all the lust for violence for a bit. And the theory of a grieving couple lends to this. Lady Macbeth is defined by her husband, and, if she had children, she would be defined as a mother, but this second purpose is critically lacking. Therefore, all her focus is on her husband's success. Perhaps ambition has blinded her into thinking this is the only way they can be happy. As well as the theme of children affecting Lady Macbeth, it also heavily affects Macbeth. When he becomes king, he begins to dwell on the prophecy that Banquo's children will be kings, and not his. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown, and put a barren sceptre in my grip. The devastating image of Banquo's long line of crowned children leads Macbeth to murder again. The witches know this is one of Macbeth's weaknesses. 2 of the 3 visions they show him use children, because they know this imagery is more likely to manipulate him. As Macbeth's obsession with keeping the throne grows, he seems to realise too late that he cannot hold on to it, and has therefore destroyed himself for nothing. For Banquo's issue have I filed my mind. This descent into madness from desperation causes him to try and extinguish not only every contender to the throne, but all of their descendants also, i.e. Banquo and his son, though he gets away, and when Macbeth can't kill Macduff, he has his family killed. Shakespeare's lesson throughout is that if you go against the natural order of things and against God, as Macbeth does by stealing the crown and denying the rightful heir the due of birth, then you will not be allowed to prosper. Macbeth says to Duncan, "Our duties are to your throne and state, children and servants." In Shakespeare's time, the king was seen as a father to his people. Macbeth murders his father, and likewise the concept of fatherhood for himself. He will have no heirs and no line of succession as punishment.